Hi everyone, I'm Todd Nauck. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So we're continuing the X-Men group shot, the Copic colors, here on this X-Men sketch cover. So today's video is Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, one of my personal favorite characters. So let's flip the camera around and get to coloring. Okay, so here we go. We've pretty much finished this side of the cover. So now it's time to tackle the left-hand side. So we're going to start with Kitty. I'll be sharing with you my tips and tricks as well as the Copic code color numbers that I'll be using so that you can use them in your illustrations as well. So let's start with Kitty's skin tone. So we're going to start with the lighter shade of E, the E color spectrum. So I'm going to start with the E00 for my base shade for Kitty. If you've watched the previous videos, Copic color videos for this X-Men group shot, you know where our light source is pretty much coming from, and that's above and a little bit to our left. So I'm going to keep that in mind and leave a little bit of white on the board where the light would be hitting, to a degree, you know, just as a little bit of room for some extra highlights if necessary. Don't need to use a lot or leave a lot, but just something I try to keep in mind whenever possible. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of a darker shade. Not necessarily the shadow. It does kind of fall in the shadow areas, but I'll be coming in with the cool grays as always for the more realistic shadows, but I like to sculpt in a few different shades of color before going to the color or the shadow stage. So anywhere where the light would be the opposite light from where the light would be hitting. So underneath the eyes, here on this side of the jawline, a little bit of the ear because the hair would cover it, a little bit underneath this part of her bangs, a little bit under that part, a little bit under the nose, a little bit there under the chin, a little bit here under where this cheek would be. Even though I did not use line art to delineate where the cheek would be like I did on this side, I can use a little bit of color there to kind of sculpt in the cheek shape, and a little bit underneath her neck, or under her chin onto her neck, because that's where the light would be hitting, or the shadow would be hitting because the light is coming down like that. So I like to add a little rosy color to the nose, so I'm going to use a little R20. Just right there on the tip of the nose. A little bit here on the cheeks, just to give her some rosy cheeks. Just a little bit, and just a teeny tiny bit on this side of the chin. Now I'm going to come in with some R00 just to kind of blend that all through a little bit. Pardon me, scoped out a little bit of her jawline there and pull some of that pink up into the bridge of her nose a little bit like that. All right, now let's add some pink to her lips here. Going to use some RV32. Okay, let's darken that up with a little bit of RV95, mostly on the upper lip. On the left-hand side, a little bit here on the bottom lip. And let's drop in some brown for her eyes. I'm going to start with, let's try the E15. Now, this shot is getting kind of small, so I'm not going to do a lot of heavy rendering of the eye color, so just pretty much that one shade of brown should work for now. And let's put in her hair color. She's got brown hair, so let's start with the E57. Starting with the darker shade first. And then we're going to work our way to the lighter shades like we have on other characters' hair colors, like Jean and Nightcrawler and Cyclops in the previous videos. Hopefully you saw those. Let's see, so I'm considering where the light's hitting and putting this darker shade on the opposite side, or here at the roots here of her part. Now I use real life reference. I'll look at real life hair and study how do the highlights hit the hair? Where do the shadows hit the hair? Sometimes I'll even pull up photo reference as I'm drawing so I can see just kind of the flow of the hair, the different hair textures. Like Kitty has more of a wave to her hair, especially in the 80s and 90s, which is more so than maybe Dazzler's hair or Jean Grey's hair. So looking at different hair textures and then how does the light fall on that? Where do the highlights and shadows fall? And that kind of helps me get an idea of how I want to illustrate hair. So the further we get down to the ends of her hair, the further away they're getting from the light. So I can use a little bit more of this darker shade. We are going to come in with lighter shades of brown here in a moment. So considering the different curves of the curls, the body of the hair is where I consider where the highlights would hit. But mostly up here at the top because it's closest to the light, the top of her head more so than the lower parts of her head. So we're going to leave a bigger chunk of white there for the moment. So I'm going to lighten up to an E55. I'm going to blend from the darker shade into that white. And I want a nice white highlight, much like I did with Jean in the Jean video. So I'm going to leave a nice little strip of white that arcs around her head for the highlight from the light source, because this gives Kitty, as with Jean, that healthy hair sort of look. So it's got this nice Pantene Pro V shine to her hair. This video is not sponsored by Pantene Pro V. I am just going off the advertising. So continue that down through here, just leaving a little bit of white. Want that healthy body shine, healthy hair shine. We can leave less light or less white as I move towards the bottom of the hair. But definitely right up through here can be a real nice detail. In a sense, leaving that white is leaving a detail for the viewer to see, and that's that eye candy. That can be really fun. And blending this E55 into the E57 can really give a nice smooth effect. We will come in there with a little bit of gray later on, but for now, getting the base colors in, got Kitty's hair tackled. So this is her later Excalibur uniform, so we're gonna have some yellows and kind of grayish blues in here. So let's start with the yellow. So we're gonna use the Y13, which is pretty much my classic X-Men universal yellow. Most all my X-Men characters, we used them on Colossus, Cyclops, Wolverine. Going to use the same yellow for Kitty. Probably use the same yellow for Bishop here, who's right next door. Maybe for Jubilee in a future video. But for right now, we're just going to focus on Kitty, get my base shade of yellow in here. And leaving a little white. Again, always leaving a little bit of the white of the board to play with those highlights when necessary. Keeping in mind the shapes of like the shoulder pads here. So bottom part of the shoulder pad would be more colored. The top parts, upper parts here would be more where the highlight would hit. The further we move away from the light, the less white would be visible. Like with her chest here, keeping in mind the shape of her chest. The bottom side would receive more color and shadow. More light is hitting here at the top upper portion, so leaving more white there for the highlight. A little bit here through the rib cage, upper abdomen I should say maybe. But as we move further away from the light, the more color we'll use there. We won't need to leave as much highlight because it's further away. With the gloves, the underside would be further from the light. Just always keeping that in mind. We'll leave that X available for some red. Let's see, we've got our fingers over here. Make sure those get colored. And the lower part of her costume there. Okay, so that's our base yellow for Kitty. Want to come in with a secondary shade, a little bit of a warmer shade, much like I did for the other characters. Going to use that same Y21. We used the Y13, if I didn't state that earlier. Now using the Y21 for any place that would be more of a shadowed area. And it's just sculpting in that color. Keeping in mind the wrinkles, I can use the brush tip to sculpt in some subtle wrinkles of color for the cloth of her uniform. Since these fingers are farther away from the light here on her hip, going to have more shadow there, more darker colors as well. Do a little second coat here underneath the where the collar would flip over her shoulder. Less light's going to hit there because that collar is going to cause a shadow, and it'll be a deeper yellow. Now to come in with a little Y00 here, just to blend into the whites. My lightest shade of yellow that I owned, Y00. I'm just going to eat up a little bit of this white here, just leaving a little tiny bit of white for the highlight. But this very light yellow going from the Y21 to the Y23 or Y13 and into the white to kind of smooth it all out, smooth it all together. But I do like leaving some of the white of that board, especially like right there. I'm actually pointing there, I'm not applying color, just to show right there on around the ridge, the tip of the collar there, just leaving a little white highlight can be a real nice detail. All right, let's go ahead and color the X logo with our classic R27, as I've used with the other X-Men. Simple as that. Now let's do the kind of, oops, you know what? I just spotted a part of her costume I had forgotten. We have her arm on this side of Wolverine's arm, so we're going to add the Y13, and because it's so far over here, we're not going to leave any white of the board because it would mostly be in shadow. Y21 there. So now all the yellow has been applied. Now we'll tackle the darker part of her costume, which in the 90s was kind of a bluish gray. So I want to try to maintain that. So we're going to start with some neutral gray 5, I believe. Let's try the neutral gray 5 first. Yeah, I think that's working, at least for this side of her costume. Got that elbow. Now because of the light source coming here, I'm going to leave this outer rim of her arm. I like to color through the black, so I have a nice deep saturation of color over the black. So this left part of her arm, that's where the light would be hitting. So we're going to leave more white there. Same here on her torso. Going to leave much of that as a very white highlight onto the kind of spandexy sort of jumpsuit uniform. Do the same here through the thighs. Maybe leave a white highlight down the middle of the thigh a little bit. Go ahead and color over the black so we have nice saturation of color. Leaving a little bit of a white light there where the pants meet at the pelvis area. Leaving some white in the center of the Well, sounds like the lawn guys are here today. That's not usually here on Mondays. We'll just pause while we wait for them to leave. Okay, so we're gonna try adding some blue here. I want to have a little bit of a blue tint to this gray. So I'm gonna come in with some B45. B45. And just go right over all this neutral gray with a shade of blue, so I get a nice shade of bluish gray. So every spot where I had gray on Kitty, I'm gonna add this blue. Oops, in case that wasn't on screen, I was just adding some blue to the shoulder, to this far elbow. Still want to keep this white highlight here running down the left side of her. Our left side, I guess it would be her right side, because our light source is coming from our left, and it's really going to help her kind of delineate from the other characters here. So that white highlight will be a nice element to keep all the colors from just all kind of blending together. That white is a nice tool to help her kind of stand out, especially as we start to fill out more characters in here, especially with the nature of the kind of reflective aspect of the jumpsuit. Especially the black part, essentially, is what I'm referring to. All right, so we have a nice shade of bluish gray there, just using those two colors. Now it's shadow time. Let's start dropping in the cool gray shadows. So I'm going to start with her skin. So I'm going to go with a cool gray 1 here initially. So on our right-hand side of her nose. And the jaw here. This is where the shadow would fall. So I have to keep in mind, always thinking about the shadows, the light source, and then the shadows. So if I know where my light source is, I'll know where my shadows are. If I just think opposite of, oh, I'm so sorry, gang, I was completely off screen there. I was just go over what I was doing here. It's just up the bridge of the nose, under the eye, here on the jaw, here on the this side of her face. Because the light's coming from this way, so I'm putting the shadows over here. So sorry about that, gang. Forgot to slide it up. Under this eye as well. Keeping in mind the hair, how it falls. Over her forehead, add some gray there. Down the jawline there. So it gives us, the cool gray 1 gives us really nice, realistic shadow on her face. I'm going to come in with a little cool gray 2 here. It's very subtle, but I want to add it to the lips. And we're going to continue with this cool gray 2, a little bit here underneath the jawline, a little bit more on this side, maybe a little bit more underneath the eyes, maybe a little bit more underneath the nose, and then here through the yellows. Really like how the cool gray pops on the yellows. It really gives it that nicer kind of realistic looking shadow. Here on this far side of the shoulder pad, because it is out of the path of the light, really helps start to create a kind of a 3D effect. Underneath that part of the collar. Through the chest here. Now I utilized the black I used here on the black portions of the chest as an element to guide the shadows of the cool grays. So sorry, gang. I did not expect. Hopefully, my mic isn't picking up the lawnmowers that's going on outside. So I do apologize if it got a little too loud. It's loud for me, so hopefully it's not picking up here on the video. So I pause to keep the sound quality a little better. So very unexpected today. So just coming in with this cool gray 2, and we're gonna add some shadows as we move further down her costume. Same on the gloves, here on the knuckles. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was so focused on the lawn, I forgot to slide the board down. So I just added some cool gray right here. and a little bit here on the knuckles. Just reapply that so you can see what I did. And here through the abdomen, a little bit here on the belt. Here on these fingers behind Wolverine. Here through the lower parts of her costume. Using more gray the further away we are from the light source, or if something overlaps. Now I left a little bit of a kind of that deeper yellow there is kind of almost like a reflected light, a little bit. And then over here on this far arm, inside the glove there, definitely want a lot of gray. Just cut a little bit of gray right there like that. Maybe just beef up some of add a second coat here around the neck, because it would really be a deeper shadow here because the light cannot get to it because of her hair as well as her neck covering over that portion of the collar. Really give a nice deeper shadow. And let's come in with some cool gray 4 here for just a little bit of shadow in her hair. Anywhere where I put the line art, we're going to just add a little more cool gray, or add some cool gray to create some shadow and some depth. Don't want too much gray in here, but just a little bit here to give it to sculpt in a little bit of shape and form with shadow. This cool gray 4 isn't too overpowering, isn't too dark. Definitely want the cool gray, the shadows in here amidst the inner parts of her hair where the light would not be hitting. Maybe a little bit of this darker gray right underneath her nose there. Be a little bit darker gray underneath her shoulder pad. And I want a little bit of this darker gray inside that glove to really create some volume. Just pop in a little gray here on the X logo, just to kind of give that a little form as well. Oh, and then just a quick little touch here with my Jelly Roll white gel pen. Could come in, put a little tiny highlight in Kitty's nose. Just beef up the highlight here in her eyes. Just gives her a little extra life. So there we go, Kitty Pryde. So let's flip the camera around and we'll sign off for the day. Okay, there we go. We got Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde added to the, what would that be? Let's see, the right-hand side of this, the back cover. Let's say the back cover to this sketch cover. Gang, I hope you had fun. Thanks for joining me. If you could, feel free to leave a thumbs up and a comment. It's always great to hear from you. And do please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're on any of the social media, all my links are listed in the video description below. So follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr. They're all listed below. And as well as I should have a link to a shot of this image on my Instagram will be linked in the video description here really soon, if not already. So gang, thanks so much. I appreciate you hanging out. Keep on drawing, keep having fun. Take care.